Hello there, my name is Ahmad Laduni, and today I am going to read aloud about Advanced Listening Task 4. Let's go. Part 1, 10 o'clock news. In this news, there are six news that has been uttered in the 10 o'clock news. The first news is a Buddhist temple on the outskirts of the city has opened. The successful opening ceremony was attended by people of different religions. The news number two is about the cell phone. Now is the cheapest time in history to buy and use a cell phone due to the use of different networks and the resulting price war with cell phone prices hitting an all-time low. The news number three is the generator from the West Bank stayed on a double-decker bus for 621 days, going down in the history books after completing the world's longest bus journey. However, deciding to stop after the birth of her third grandchild. The news number four is an animal sanctuary to be funded by the local council, expected to help rescue abandoned pets and local wildlife. Will open in the suburbs next week. In the suburb next week, please call the hotline if you would like to make a donation. The fifth news is the evidence that diets higher in fruits and vegetables can reduce the risk of life-threatening disease has led health officials to promoting fresh fruits and vegetables this week in a bid to urge the population to increase their intake from an average of four serving per day to seven. And the last news is with a high of 8 degrees, tomorrow will be cold. The evening may bring some wind, and you may get some sleet during the night. Part 2. This is the story of Colin, the Grumpy King. It all began around a week ago when the evil queen that transformed Bertie into a toad was strolling by the pond in the palace garden. She was complaining about the little children who were always abandoning all their toys all around the throne room, and Barker, the stupid palace dog that ran up and peed on her hand, although she disliked the animals. And on top of that, she complained about the monarch. Speaking of Tywin, he found he was sitting on a diamond-studded throne, but it wasn't Colin's brains that weighed heavily on his head. It was a golden crown, because of evil queen had transformed Colin into the king, the real king swam at the bottom of the pool. It takes a while for Colin realizes what had happened, and while he still seems a little confused, a red-clad servant announced that the lovely Princess Beatrice will soon be entering the room to lead a group of the tiniest and sweetest little girl who lived in the palace. King Colin must mused to himself. Actually, she is not that bad, and noticed that she was smiling, and smiling right back at him. It was a strange thing for him to smile, because when he was still a fish, all he was able to do was gawk. The smile felt, well, kind of pleasant. The little girls who had come with Beatrice all wore pink dresses, and they were all bowing nicely. Just then, Colin noticed that the Wicked Queen was seated on a throne next to him. The little girls that came with Beatrice all wore pink gowns, and they all did pretty small bows with a small bows. In the early morning, the chancellor, who was responsible for all the gold and treasure in the kingdom, had come over the council with the king. He says that they've raised a lot of money than expected, and he wondered what they ought to be spending it for. Now we can build a new children's hospital for all the little ones who are unprivileged, who are underprivileged. Princess Beatrice said. When the wicked queen heard this, she was very angry. As the chancellor and the lovely Princess Beatrice told King Colin how thoughtful he was, a decision was made to construct the hospital. So the day progressed till King Colin emerged in his golden chariot, pulled by six white horses, and was cheerfully greeted by everyone who watched him ride by. Colin was waving at the people and practiced his smile. He was thinking about how wonderful it was to be so popular and to be loved by all for his magnanimity and his wisdom. The cook was serving the flies at lunchtime. He mentioned under his breath that he'd overheard a rumor that some were a bit displeased with the banning of football. Just as they had finished lunch, a huge roar of anger rang out throughout the palace. There was the sound of banging on the front door, and one or two shots fired into the air. On the balcony, Colin looked out over the sea of angry faces that surrounded the castle. The castle. They were football fans, but wise Colin was a brave and determined man. At this, the people became a bit calmer, as they loved the football, and some teachers in the crowd ordered everybody to shut up and hear out what the king said. By now, most of the people listened, but one boy at the very back of the crowd yelled something really harsh at Colin. When they hear about this, everybody laughed, because although Colin was a king of men, his face looked a little fishy anyways. Colin got really mad when the people were laughing about him. The evil queen heard all of this, and she could not contain himself much more. A view of the most angry man scaled the plumbing in the castle and went up onto the ledge. King Colin became frightened and hurried all the way inside. he sees the weak queen. He turns and sees a ridiculous small tadpole called Tim. He would normally be extremely annoyed by pointless inquiries. Yet he felt rather comforted by a little Tim this day. I have no idea, Colin says. Actually, I do not really know much of anything. I'm just a stupid little fish, you see. All I ever do is just swimming all day around. And with that, he managed, he managed, he managed, he manages to transform his shock into smiles. Bertie said the moral of the story was that if you place a fish in charge, that is what you could reasonably hope for. Nothing but trouble. The frog, each, the frog is much royal, says Bertie, and perhaps he is absolutely right. Part 3. The Gingerbread Man. There once was an elderly gentleman, an old woman, and a boy. In the morning, the elderly lady baked the gingerbread in the shape of men. As she put them in the oven for baking, she told the little boy, "You watch the gingerbread while both grandfather and I work in the field." And so the grandfather and grandmother came out and began to dig the potatoes, leaving the little boy watch the oven. But he began to dream and did not pay any attention the whole while. Then suddenly he hears noise. He looks up, the oven doors open, and from inside the oven leaps a gingerbread man, and he rolls down the stairs towards the open house doors. The little boy runs. The little boy runs to shut the door, but the gingerbread man was too fast for him and rolls past the door, down the stairs and out onto the street before the boy could get him. The little boy dashed after him as fast as he possibly could, yelling for his grandparents, who had heard the noise and tossed their spades in the green in pursuit. The gingerbread baker proceeds. The gingerbread baker proceeds in the tree in the distance, and before long he is out of sight, while they have to sit down, out of breath, on the river bank to rest. Onward went the gingerbread man, and soon he reached two men who were digging a well who had looked up from work. The gingerbread man continued to run, and soon he came across two men who were digging a ditch. The gingerbread man quickly caught up to them and saw they would never be able to get him, and they gave up the chase and sat down to take a rest. The gingerbread man continued to walk, and soon he reached the bear. He runs as quickly as his feet can take him in pursuit of the gingerbread man, who never stopped to take a second glance. Soon the bear was so far behind that he felt it best to give up the hunt early on. So he stretches out on the side of the road for a rest. The gingerbread man continued to walk, and soon he reached the fox. that was lying peacefully in the corner of the fence. The gingerbread man halted. The gingerbread man halted his run for the first time, approached, and exclaimed in a very loud voice, "The gingerbread man, come closer!" And leaning towards the fox, he yelled, "I had been running quicker than an old man, an old woman, a little boy, two large men, a dog, and a wolf, and I can run quicker than you too. You can you?" The fox yelled, and he grabbed the gingerbread man with his razor sharp teeth in the twinkling of an eye. That was a story about a gingerbread man. I thought that the ending was a little sad, but Bertie didn't agree. He said that gingerbread was delicious. He did not blame the fox for wanting to eat it. I guess he had a point, but again, it's just not every gingerbread man who can run. That's pretty much it for me. Thank you very much. See you again.